My name is Macpherson. I'm President and CEO of Gold79 Mines Ltd. Gold79 is a Southwest U.S. gold explorer. We have 3 projects in Arizona, Nevada. Our Gold Project, where we had some very good recent drill results. Our Jefferson Canyon Project, which we recently optioned to Kinross, and our Tip Top Project.
Derek, thank you very much for the introduction. Good to meet you again, although this time it's not in person. It's over the dreaded screen, but we'll do our best. Congratulations on your drill results out this week. Can you just summarize where they are in the drill program and what led up to it? You know, how big was the program, and are these the final results?
Yeah, so we drilled 12 holes, 1,000 meters. These are all the results are now out from the program. I think the summarize the program in sort of 3 pieces. We discovered a new high grade zone at 9 meters at 51 grams. I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. At Tyrp, we extended the strike length to the drilled strike length is 800 meters. It's over a kilometer of sampling and mapping, and we think it could go over 2. And the third is that our sheep trail targets, which we really like and still like, have more technical success than economic success. And so we need to go back and do a deeper dive there on surface work and figure out what's going on.
Great. Thank you for the summary. I saw that title. I saw the drill numbers, under 1,000 meters and 12 holes. So an average hole depth of 80 meters. So these are very shallow and short holes, and you were doing them RC, so it must have ripped through that quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the program was done. We started drilling beginning of January. So just to for a bit of a lead up, we raised on the back of our option agreement on Jefferson Canyon with Kinross. We were able to raise $1 million, supported by insiders in Kinross and then some of our long-term investors. And that money, we basically took that money and said portion of that we were going to go drill. Rig availability has improved materially in Nevada and Arizona, and so we were able to get a drill for the first couple of weeks of January. And then, I think the whole program was 10 days for that. Yeah, and all the holes are very short. It's 1,000 meters. Everything's close to surface. That 9 meters at 50 grams is 60 meters downhole, but about 40 meters from surface. So, very open pittable targets.
Yeah, they're fantastic, and presumably all open at depth.
All open at depth.
We've got to talk about the high grade, because it is such a big number. It's such a kind of a headline act. I then went and I had a look at your news release, and I looked at some of the plans of the drilling, and I saw almost all of the drilling was right across the main strike of the ore body. And then I looked where the high grade was, and it was kind of down the guts of the system. And I thought, oh my God, they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. They're drilling down the strike and the plunge of the system. And then I read on, and you've identified a cross set of structures. So it's a complicated system. Presumably the next thing you're going to have to do is step outside of the main trend and then test those cross structures separate, or am I overinterpreting? Perhaps over to you. Why don't you tell me what your take on that high grade zone is?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it was it evolved. The decision to turn the rig that way was done as we were drilling 25 and 26. So hole 27 and 28 are drilled in that direction. 27 we lost in the stope, so 28 hit the high grade. So we drilled 23 and 24 at Tyrp, hit exactly what we were expecting. So 23 is 44 meters at 2 grams gold. So a very good hole in its own right. And when we were just basically stepping south along Tyrp, and we went and drilled 25 and 26, and my VPX Rob said, there's a change in the geology from 24 to 25, and it looked like we were much higher in the system. Rob's got 40 years experience in epithermal systems, and so his view was something had changed, and we knew the white spar fault was there. It wasn't named until last week, but we knew the white spar fault was there, and so Rob went and said, okay, the plan was to actually drill a hole just from the other side back across Tyrp, from that pad. And so Rob went and did some mapping, and we knew that there were some veins that ran the wrong direction. And what he identified is there's a series of veins that run parallel to the white spar fault. And so it's effectively like an X, right? Tyrp runs this way, and the white spar fault runs through it this way. So white spar fault is sort of northwest southeast, whereas the main Tyrp is northeast southwest. And so we decided to drill across that across the White Spar Fault, which is, as you noted, is a long strike with Tyra. And that was actually part of the reason we want to make sure we put a lot of good figures and diagrams and explanations to why we drilled that hole. Because we looked at, when Rob and I talked about him drilling that hole, and then also I said, like, it still looked like we're drilling down the guts of Tyro. And then when the results came back, I was like, well, it looks like we drilled down the guts of Tyro, and it really wasn't. That was the focus, was this cross-cutting structure, and the bays effectively run the wrong way to drill it. If we had drilled it parallel to Tyro, or perpendicular to Tyro, the way we had been drilling, we would have probably missed that high grade zone.
Has there been any mining in that orientation? Because there are lots of small old mines in the area. Has that been a kind of a favoured direction for any drilling, or is it a completely kind of new recognition of a direction or a trend or a possibility?
There are a few prospect fits on the White Spar Fault. It's kind of interesting. If you look at a lot of our images we show where we're looking into the Tyro mine, a lot of our pictures, you're standing effectively on the White Spar Fault there. That's actually the road and the entrance. There's a lot of, it's been worked right at that intersection. It's kind of worked over. The answer is probably yes. There's been a little bit of mining there, but not really understood. We haven't done, the next step for us, you talked a little bit about the next step is to step out on that fault and understand, whether the mineralization extends beyond the sort of the confines of Tyro, or it's just a Tyro specific, that interaction important. Actually, the next step for us is to go out and do some detailed mapping and sampling on the White Spar Fault. We haven't, it hadn't been an area of focus because we didn't quite understand how important it was to the overall to the structure. And so for us, that's the next step. And Rob's going to be out there on Monday starting that work because we needed, before we put a drill on it, we think we need to understand it a little bit better.
And that really is a fantastic result. And I think it's kind of the wider intersection is 80 odd meters at 6 grams. Those are good days in exploration. You're very happy when you get results like that back. But equally, you mentioned hole, was it 23, which has got 44 meters at 2 and a bit grams gold. And how far away down strike or a long strike away from that, the White Spar Fault is that?
That's about, the White Spar Fault is sort of section lines. So 23 was drilled on section line 400. That would be, the White Spar Fault is about section 300, a little bit south of section 300. So it's about 100 meters from the White Spar Fault. So the important part of where that is, that where 23 is, which is sort of on section 300, section 200 is where the underground workings are. And the underground workings, we sampled underground earlier in 2022 and got 25 meters at 2.5 across the width of the opening. Obviously, those sampling numbers that we have from underground are limited by the width of the opening. We can't. We're kind of constrained from that perspective when we were doing the sampling. And then another 500 meters north of that is the whole drilling we did in the fall of 2021, which is I think it was 21 meters at 2 grams. So we're starting to demonstrate, that's in that range, you're talking about 500-600 meters of sort of strike. There's a lot of holes in there we'd have to drill to prove that you got continuity, but we're starting to look at a real scale and effectively open pittable depths and definitely and what would be high grade for open pits.
So my question is, how deep does the deepest working go in the area?
The shaft is down to about, I'd have to double check off the top of my head here. The shaft is about, the historic shaft is, I want to say, maybe 100 meters deep from the floor of the pit, 100 meters below the floor of the pit. So maybe 150 meters from sort of original surface. So, I think that there's lots of opportunity here. The historic shaft, everything was sort of mined. The pit was dug in the 80s. Doesn't look like it, they kind of knew what they were doing. Well, a lot of it was processed. There's actually a lot of what we would consider vein material hanging out around, sort of in stockpiles around. But also, and and then same thing. The shaft was put in 1910s, 1920s, and that mining was clearly they didn't again, different sets of technology, didn't really know what they were doing. They went below the water table there too, so that runs into problems of that time frame for mining. But I think in the open district, historically, so the larger district as a whole, there's 100 years of historic mining here. Typically, the epithermal systems have a vertical extent of about 300 meters. So we know that we're in the boiling zone at Tyro. So our view is that there's at least 300 meters below our feet that we can.
Nice, lots of runway. Now you've got these 3 patented areas which are the core of your concession block. You spoke about Tyro having now a strike of a kilometre or potentially more. How much of that lies within your patented cores? I mean, as in, have you got the freedom to do the work that you want to do on the area that you're interested in?
So the kilometer, the plus kilometer strike is pretty much all on patents. It extends a little bit off on either end. Tyro terminates, the Tyro proper, so that 1 kilometer terminates in something called the Frisco Mine Fault, which would be out on BLM ground. So there's a small section that's out there, and then the other end of it terminates into the sheet trail ledge, which is that fault. And that a little bit of there's a gap between the end of Tyro and the sheet trail patents. However, when we talk about the 2 kilometers, we're talking about a vein we named the Sunrise vein, and then a vein we named the Sunset vein. And there we see higher level alteration, but it's the same strike. It just looked like there's some vertical and horizontal displacement from the various faults and the rhyolite dikes that come through. We have done some work at the Sunset vein. Got some samples. We have 11.5 gram sample there. We drilled some holes in fall 2021. It's clear to us we didn't drill deep enough, and so we have some ability to work in there. The ideal way to drill Sunset, we would need an adjustment to our current notice of intent on the BLM. We do have an active notice of intent, so we can drill off the patents. We just have to amend it, and so there's an opportunity there. But yeah, we have lots of drilling to do on the patents and proving strike. The 25 and 26 we need to, which is section 200 and section 150, we need to set up and drill a little bit deeper on those targets. When we continue to step south, we can step north most of the way, and then obviously as we noted, there's about a 500 meter gap between the fall 20 drilling and the underground sampling, and so we can probably need to fill that in as well. And we could drill down, Rob believes we could drill down to about 150 meters vertical depth from the patents at Tyro. If we wanted to go deeper, we'd have to step back off them, and that would require, again, an amendment to our notice.
In your new presentation, which came out, I think, yesterday or today, you talk about the work plan for Gold Chain involving mapping and sampling and then preparing for the next phase of drilling. Clearly, the results that you've got on this phase have been so encouraging. It would probably make you want to kind of accelerate that and scale up as much as possible, budgets permitting. Can you talk to me about the balance between what you want to do and your kind of financial capacity to do that, and what your plan is around that? Yeah.
So I mean, I guess first and foremost, the reason that it says mapping and sampling first is that it is sort of what we talked about earlier on the White Smart Fault. We haven't done a lot of work on it, and we think we need to understand it better before we go out and try and drill it. Because obviously capital isn't cheap at this moment. As far as the next drill program, Gold Chain is in a part of Arizona where you don't really want to drill in the summer if we can avoid it. So it gets 120 degrees Fahrenheit, gets to the point where the gear is so hot you can't touch it. So not something, if you could avoid it, it's worthwhile. I mean, we could drill through it if we had to, or if we had the budget to, but it's a little less efficient. And you have other safety concerns. So our thought process is that what I'd like to do is come back and get another round of drilling 1,000 to 2,000 meters in this spring, and then also and come back in the fall with a follow-up program as well, because I think we have the targets for it. We have 5,000 to 7,000 meters of targets that I think we could drill easily, both testing depth, strike extent, etc. And within our between our notice and the patents, we get most of that covered. We have it permitted.
So sorry. So do a kind of a short program in April, May, and then do another one September, October.
Yeah, that would be the thought process. At some point, we need to drill we'd like, ideally like to drill some core. RC is cheap and quick and it's really nice, but I think we need for a couple of things. We need to do some, I'd like to do some early stage metallurgical work as a metallurgist. And then also we just need to, get a little more information from core as well as far as structure goes. And so that's part of that. But, that's an ideal world. Right now, we have about $300,000 in cash. So we're not in a position to kick off a new drill program. And so, we're going to look at our options to shore up the balance sheet and fund that next round.
You must have had an easier time calling investors in the last week than you've had perhaps in the last 12 months. There's nothing like a few high-grade holds and proof of concept, more than proof of concept, demonstrable value catalysts to make conversations with potential investors easier. What's the reception been like this week?
It's been very good. A lot of positive feedback, both from existing shareholders and people I haven't heard from in a couple of years that I've known in the industry for a long time, sort of called me out of the blue. So that's been it's very encouraging and very positive. Obviously, there's some people that ask the same questions that you asked about the direction and then how we cut the hole as well and how we reported it. But lots of positive news, lots of positive feedback from the investment community, both and people that I have a lot of respect for as well.
For the avoidance of doubt, I did find your news release very clear. So I went through and I looked at the orientation. I looked at the explanation for the orientation of hole 28, and I looked at the cross section as well. So my initial knee-jerk reaction was but on reading and actually seeing what you'd written in the detail, I was comfortable with what you had done. If that makes a difference, for what it's worth.
I think that I appreciate that feedback, but it's also that we having been an analyst in my past life, I know what I would have criticized when I looked at that, much like you did. Your knee-jerk reaction is, well, why did you cut the hole that way and why did you drill that orientation? And so we wanted to make sure that we provide enough information to investors, and it probably took a little longer than I would have liked to get the news release out, but we wanted to put those figures in so that we could really demonstrate why we did what we did, and so that people could understand it. Because we drilled the hole the right direction. We did the right thing in our opinion, and so it's not we're not trying to hide it either. We're not trying to hide that we drilled parallel to the Tyrp vein as part of that. We were drilling the White Spar Fault. That was the target.
Yeah, great. I've heard the phrase that the first few minutes of life are the most dangerous, and someone kind of jokes afterwards, well, the last few minutes of life are also quite dangerous. But in what I'm getting at is that when you have a fledgling company with let's say relatively fragile balance sheet and is at the start of its journey, you've got to play those cards right so that you can move on to the next phase. And I'm just through looking through your news releases and talking to you and looking at your past interviews, I really get the feel that this is a credible project and you've got kind of an ambition to turn it into a kind of a more robust company, particularly when it comes to the balance sheet. But this is a kind of a delicate moment. So I think quite a lot hinges on your next capital raise, doesn't it?
I mean, when you're a junior exploration company, everything hinges on your next capital raise. The money only goes one direction, unfortunately. And so, yeah, I think we need to be very cognizant about how we approach things. We need to be, the market. We've got a great market reaction. I mean, the stock's up 100%. Well, I haven't looked at it today, but it was up 100% before we started this interviews after these results. I think that's warranted considering where our market cap was. And I think that we need to be, we need to be prudent in how we approach, always need to be prudent in how we approach things, especially on the capital side, because we can break the company with the wrong investors at this moment. And so, we've worked, when I took over this company, it had a almost entirely retail following. or shareholder base, and we've worked really hard on tightening that up. I mean, almost 20% of the company is owned by management. Kinross is in for 5%, and we've got another just under 5%, and we've got a few small institutions that are in there as well that make up, starting to tighten it up, and we have some high net worth individuals that also that I know aren't selling without telling me, I guess, is the short answer. So we've done a lot of work on tightening it up, and I think that hopefully we can continue to do that with the next raise.
I think I mean, you know this as well as I do. For the next capital raise, you find someone else who's interested and get them to kind of place a lead order, and then a lot of your shareholder register will fall around that, and you should be able to bring home whatever you think is prudent for the value. I mean, because I think a phrase you used in the past is cost of capital. So, I mean, do you want to just kind of talk a bit about that and explain what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the cost of capital as a junior explorer co is very expensive, right? Like our last raise, I think we gave up. I'd have to double check the numbers, but we did a substantial percentage of the company was sold to fund this drill program. But we did that raise at 3.5 cents. Where things sit now, I hope the next raise will be higher. Which we've effectively lowered our cost of capital to progress the company. And I think that's an important aspect of it. It's not my concept. I got it from somebody else who's been in the industry for a long time. But the whole point of investing money in the projects and putting that capital to work is that you add value to the assets, and that value then that results in the next raise being at a lower price. That's how it's supposed to work. Obviously, when you're a public company, you have to deal with sentiment and how people look at the gold price, et cetera, and that all affects it. But the whole objective is that we're going to put a little bit of money to work. It's going to, the share price is going to go up, and we'll be able to put more money to work because our cost of capital has come down. And that's the ideal world. And I think, we haven't done the raise yet, and it's only 3 days after we put the news out. So certainly nothing is guaranteed by a stretch of the imagination. But as of right now, things are looking up.
Yeah, presumably you've got good feedback, and you're busy on the telephone.
Yes, I'm a lot. As a junior explorer co CEO, you tend not to be very popular unless you have a week like some results like this. So hopefully that will change.
Good. Now, in some ways, your balance sheet and the progress you've made at Gold Chain and those results are the main gig in town. But I think we should also mention, or perhaps you could tell me what your plan, or what your the hoped plan is for Jefferson Canyon this year in your joint venture with Kinross.
Yeah. So Jefferson Canyon, just as a quick reminder, we option that. We have an option exploration agreement with Kinross on that. They have as part of that option agreement, they have an obligation to spend about $600,000 US in exploration dollars. It works out to about a 2,000 meter drill program, maybe a little bit less with inflation since when we signed it. So the hope is, hope is probably maybe a little bit too weak a word, but the plan is that they would execute that drill program this year. The caveat to them drilling it is that we still need the permits for the drill permits for it, which we've been working on now for 18 months. And the reason that we're so far in the process is probably why Kinross was willing to do a deal, because there is light at the end of the tunnel to go drill. But as of we're still working with the Forest Service on that to try and get that complete. So that yeah, I mean, there is a window where you can drill it at Jefferson as well. It's sort of May to October. And so the hope is that we have permits in time to get a small program done.
And I guess my kind of original question was going to lead to the pointy end, which is permits. Do you have any? You talk about light at the end of the tunnel, but what do you have in terms of kind of visibility on the process? How do you know that you're making progress? So what's the feedback?
So the way the process works is that you submit your plan. They tell you that you have to do, in our case, we had to do a cultural and biological study. Those studies were completed by March last year. Takes about a year to do those studies because you need multiple seasons you need all the seasons to get them done. Those studies were completed and submitted March last year. Um, well, obviously, there is manpower challenges at the Forest Service. They just don't have. They're having trouble getting people. And so where we see that progress is that we now have a biologist and an archaeologist are actively reviewing those files, or those studies, and they have to submit a final report, and that's what gets there. So that's why we know it's making progress. I made the mistake when we first kicked off the process, and we had our first meeting with the Forest Service of providing guidance as to when we thought we would get permits. That has come and gone. I'm very hesitant. I do have guidance from the Forest Service as to when they think permits will come. I am very hesitant to provide that to the market because based on their last feedback, it's there. Based on their track record, I'm not confident that they'll deliver. I'm not confident in what they've said. So we have made a lot of progress, but as I said, the light is at the end of the tunnel. The problem is that the light's been at the end of the tunnel for what feels like about eight to 9 months now, right? As far as progress.
So I think it's probably safer to celebrate it when it happens rather than to anticipate it happening.
Exactly. I think that's the right way.
Yeah. Good. So that really then is it's Gold Canyon. Sorry,
Gold Chain.
Gold Chain. I'm mixing my projects. It's Gold Chain and the company raising some money and going for it. I wish you all the best. I really like an exploration success story, and it's great to see when systematic work is being done and the results come in, particularly off a small base, because it's not as if the opportunity has disappeared here. If you can delineate something, there's plenty more to come. Or just at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, Gold79 is still a sub 10 million market cap company, even with the move this week. And if we can continue to have continue to demonstrate that there's a decent sized resource at Tyro, or demonstrate that there is a decent sized resource at Tyro, continue to have drilling success, I think that there's an opportunity for it to re-rate higher. I've always sort of said that when I joined the company, my thesis has always been, we have 3 projects, between Tip Top, Jefferson, and Gold Chain, and any one of those projects could justify our current market cap. And with 100%, even with 100% move, I still kind of in that boat. I mean, if Kinross exercises their option on Jefferson, there's a payment, a full option on Jefferson. There's a full payment for $10 million US into Gold79 for that 80% interest. That exceeds our market cap as we speak. And so it's, I think there's still opportunity. And we haven't done a lot of work on our Tip Top project, and that's just budget constrained. But I think that there's, still any one of those projects could justify our existing market cap. And I think now that we're demonstrating what we've always sort of what we felt all along at Gold Chain, is that it has potential, it has real potential. I think that there's an opportunity for this to re-rate higher with a backstop in that Jefferson Canyon option.
Well, I think the objective, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you could put some depth figures, or kind of some depth extent on a kilometer of something which is 15 to 25 meters wide and running 1.5 to 2 grams a ton, that generates value if you can do that this year.
That would be, and that's sort of the objective, is to not going to go out there and chase a resource, because that's a different stage, but to go out there and, there's a 500 meter gap that we should probably sit in and drill, and put a couple holes in to prove that there. Should we try and put a hole down to 150-ish meters? Yes. Yeah, prove that we have that vertical extent. Test the ends, right? As far as we can on the patents. See how far north and south we can extend Tyro. And then obviously, the obvious one is that once we've done the surface work and once we've done the sort of the background work, is go test the Whitesmar fault and see what it does outside of Tyro, because it's got 600-700 meters of extent on its own. But whether it's mineralized for that is a whole other set of work for us.
And maybe it's just an intersection between 2 structures, and you get a kind of an enriched zone there, but still, that's better than having nothing.
Yes. Yeah. If it's just what it is, it's still very good, and it ends up being a very high grade kicker inside Cairo, which is is what how high grade kickers is how you build mines. It's how you get the IRR and the NPV to a point that makes sense to build them. So
Good. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck with it all, and maybe see you around the traps next week.
all right. Thanks, Merle. Appreciate the time.